How close are the Tennessee Titans to being a competitive playoff level football team? That's the question we're going to dive into today. We have a very special guest joining us, Zach Lyons. Excited to get into this with him. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And today we have a special guest joining us, Zach Lyons. Zach, thanks for joining us. How's it going?
Been a while. I'm glad. I think last time I was here was during draft season, so it's nice to be on during the season.
It is nice. Zach is now the co-host of Blaine and Zach on 104.5 The Zone weekdays.
They have a real name now. It's Cover 2.
Cover 2. Wow. Look at that. I live in LA. I don't get to catch a lot of the local radio in Nashville, but I have tuned into the streaming version a few times just to see what's going on. And I got to say, Zach, you've really impressed me with the way you've just jumped into this new career. I mean, you got a lot of practice on F-Word Pod, obviously, but live radio, different story. And you are crushing it, dude. You're a real pro at it. I can't believe it, honestly.
Well, I really appreciate it because it's the biggest adjustment I think I had to make is making sure I go to break and not cuss. Those were the two biggest things.
I was literally going to say, I was going to cut in and say, I think I'm most shocked you haven't cussed once because I didn't think you had that in you.
I went to Christian school growing up, so you kind of lived to both worlds. So when they were interviewing me for the job, they're like, we love what you do with football and other F words. You can be that guy on football and other F words, and we want you to bring that same energy, that same conversation style, but you can't cuss. Is that gonna be a hard problem? Like, I went to Christian school. I know how to turn on the church voice.
There you go. Follow Zach on Twitter at the Zach Lyons. That's Lyons. If you're watching this or listening to this podcast, you probably already know Zach. Justin, how are you today? Excited to get into this conversation?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Excited to have Zach here. I think what I'm most excited for is I think he's a lot more confident in the direction right now that this team is going in than you and I are. And I could be wrong about that, but you seem pretty skeptical about a couple things. I think I've been a little skeptical. I don't get that same vibe from Zach. I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for him, but I'm excited to give him a platform to tell us why maybe we should be a bit higher than we are on the current direction.
I agree with that. So let's start by looking at where this team is now. 3-9 here. Obviously not the season any Titans fan was hoping for or even expecting. I think we've talked about this a few times on the show, but the Titans built up our expectations by being ultra aggressive in free agency and through the trade market around the March-April timeline here, when we were perfectly content going into this season with a new staff, with Will Levis first season as a starting quarterback, and just saying, you know what, whatever happens, happens. It's a rebuild. It's a regrowing team. And then they went out and add all these pieces in free agency, trade for L'Jarius Sneed, and really what felt like they went all in on Will Levis, on the Brian Callahan staff. And the results so far, 3-9, nowhere close to what you'd expect. But Zach, I know you've tweeted about this before. I've looked it up as well. This wouldn't be the first team, if they found success down the road next year or the season after, it wouldn't be the first time a new head coach came in, had a very bad record in his first season, and then went on to find success and even reach the Super Bowl, as we saw in Cincinnati, where Brian Callahan was. So Zac Taylor's first season in Cincinnati, 2019, they go 2-14. Pretty miserable year overall if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan. Dan Campbell, Detroit Lions, first season, 2021, they go 3-13-1. Both of those coaches have been able to turn things around. Now, Zach, are there any similarities between what the Titans are going through this season and what those teams went through in the first year under their head coaches that would give you some confidence that the Titans didn't make a bad hire with Brian Callahan?
Yeah, I mean, obviously. So there's a couple things in your intro I kind of want to hit on too. It's like I think there is a big messaging problem with the Tennessee Titans in general, and it's been that way since Vrabel has been coach, since I've started paying attention to like weekly pressers and all that kind of stuff because of the podcast. This PR department does not know how to coach anybody up. I mean, you see it every week. They say you see a player say something dumb, or Vrabel had said something dumb, or a coach says something dumb. Like, there's no PR. So like at the beginning of the year in February, at the Senior Bowl, they're talking patience. Be patient. This is a couple of years. Chad Brinker, this will be a couple of years. Rent Carthon, this is a reset. This could take a bit. And listen, then they make the moves and then they kind of parade through, and then the local media and the podcast, they all parade and hype it up, and it just became this big echo chamber of positivity, which, happened on the podcast. I don't know where your all's season predictions lied, particularly for you two. I was more of like a 7-win, 6-win kind of guy, because the schedule was so much tougher than any fourth place schedule should be. It was going to be tough. And so I understand that the moves and the messaging dictate like an all-in mentality and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, that's more I think that's misplaced optimism, because they decided we want to make sure we got a new stadium on the horizon. We got to get people butts and seats.
We're selling tickets.
Yeah, we're selling tickets. It's more business. But at the end of the day, their moves all made sense, right? All their moves filled holes. All their moves were, for the most part, generally met with praise by everybody, analysts and stuff. But at the end of the day, the national media got it right. Remember?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every move was, but the majority of the moves were. What they all say, 6.5 was the win total. Never changed, never moved, didn't matter. Will Levis was ranked as the 31st quarterback on all the quarterback charts, and everybody's all up in arms. How can you put, rookies ahead of Will Levis and all this kind of stuff? National media had them pegged. They were not fooled by the Titans hype machine whatsoever. And then you get into this year and you're like, well, they were kind of right about Will Levis. He's been pretty terrible to start the year, and the special teams has been bad. Defense has been bad in some spots, even though not nearly as bad as everything else. But remember when everybody called Dan Campbell a meathead and an idiot, and he's a dunce? I mean, people thought Shanahan was a spoiled Nepo hire at one point, and John Lynch was an idiot, and that marriage wasn't going to work. And they both dealt with roster turnover, and they both dealt with particular issues because they're flushing out the bad. The bad players, the bad cultures, the whatever didn't work. And this team ultimately is a team that has poured the concrete for a foundation. Unfortunately, it has not cured fast enough, and unfortunately, they haven't even got the frame up of what this team could be. But right now, they're building the foundation, and that's exactly what the Lions did. That's exactly what the 49ers allowed to happen. You got to have some form of patience. Does that patience pay off? Who knows? But you got to have some form of patience.
I think there is a little bit of a difference, though, when you look at where the Lions were. The Niners, I think, is a good comparison. But the Lions and the Bengals, those teams were bad for a long, long, long time. And yeah, the Vrabel Titans were bad in their last season and a half. But it was really a reset more than
last 2 full seasons. You lose to the Giants like they did. You knew that season was over. Those 7 wins, except for Green Bay, were all against bad teams. Weren't
they 7-3
all you?
Yeah,
but I'm saying that those are worthless wins, and that's why I said the whole time.
We talked about it, Justin, on the show, how not impressive some of those wins were.
Yes, I remember they had a 5-game win streak. That was one of the most unimpressive win streaks, barely beating the Raiders and stuff. I remember.
But the point is, you're looking at a team that was coming off Ryan Tannehill, while older, was like a franchise quarterback in the way he could have been at his age. Derrick Henry, face of the franchise player, and you're moving on from all those guys. So in some ways, you almost expect the rebuild could be even longer than just a quick turnaround, because it wasn't like they were accumulating high draft picks and all this like young good players. It's like they were moving on from the older guys that were towards the end of their career. So I don't know, Justin, you have something?
Yeah, a couple things I want to add. And I mean, Zach brought up a lot of good points. First of all, I want to reiterate, because he did say it, but the echo chamber of positivity, it was very much limited to local media and local analysts, right? Graver, you had pointed out a couple tweets I remember then where national analysts were like, I'm confused by the Titans offseason. Aren't they rebuilding? Why are they paying a ton of money to Calvin Ridley and L'Jarius Sneed and trading draft capital and blah, 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 right? So it's the national media was never fooled. They never liked them, and they were proven correct, obviously. The thing that bothers me about the Lions example, if I recall correctly, I do recall correctly, that first Dan Campbell year, that roster was such a shit show. It was so friggin' terrible. That roster, I would put up there with the Ken Wisenhunt rosters in Tennessee. that 3-13, Dan. It was really, really bad. Everyone knew it was really bad. It was nowhere near as bad as this current Titans roster is. I think this current Titans roster is half decent. I think it's a lot better than 3-9, or it should be better than 3-9. The current Titans roster.
Wait a second, Zach, though. Hang on.
I'm sorry?
Hang on a second. DeAndre Swift is a way better player than Antonio Andrews. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a way better player than Dorial Green.
What year was Amon-Ra St. Brown in?
This is 2021 Lions.
This is the 2021 season.
Yeah. Jamal Williams.
Your boy John Robinson traded up for Des Fitzpatrick.
TJ Hawkinson, he's on Delaney Walker's level from that Ken Wisenhunt team.
Jared Goff, Josh Reynolds, TJ Hawkinson, Khalif Raymond, Jamal Williams, who ended up having how many touchdowns that year? Oh, that was
not that year. It was the following year that he had.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift. I mean, those are some really big names on.
I think there's some revisionist history here, though. Like Jamal Williams, who were some of those other guys? Like Khalif Raymond, who was Khalif Raymond in 2021, right? A guy that we wanted nothing to do with anymore. And Jared Goff, a cast-off that they didn't want anymore. The Rams threw the side. Like, there's a little bit of revisionist history. TJ
But
Hawkinson,
you're talking about, are they better than the 2015? They're better. Are you trying to say that Jared Goff is not better than Zach Mettenberger at that time, back in 2021?
Absolutely. Of course he is. But my point is, I think that 2021 Lions roster was a 3-13 team. Like, I really do think that Lions roster was really bad. I remember there was no expectations. Look at preseason predictions. No one had that 2021 Lions team be good. Most of them thought they were like the New England Patriots of this year. Oh, they're going to get the number 1 overall pick in that draft. Like, I recall people not having any expectations for that. I think this Titans roster today is significantly better than that one was.
I think that's fair, but not on the Wisenhunt level rosters either. And the other big thing with the Lions is they hired Ben Johnson after this 2021 season, and he revolutionized their offense. And like that's not happening for the Titans because Brian Callahan is your offensive coordinator. They're not hiring a wonder kid to come revolutionize the offense. They already have that.
The other point I wanted to make before we started putting Jamal Williams in the Hall of Fame was what was it not? And Zach, you pay close attention to this, so I think you'll know better than I recall. But wasn't it Burke Nihill who went on like a Ramon, Kayla, and Will type of show and like really, really paraded the Brian Callahan hire and the offseason they had, like kind of speaking to that positivity echo chamber?
Yeah. I mean, like most people do with a new hire, they pumped it up. You don't really see anybody in the NFL say, "Oh, we just hired this coach. He fucking sucks," and they went on the radio and say that.
I think you know what I mean. Like there was just talking about setting expectations. And look, I'm not blaming them for it. Everyone does it, but you kind of alluded to it. It very much felt like a let's put butts in seats kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but that was more of Burke Nihill himself talked about Brian Callahan's history, his coaching history, but talked about how him and Rand got along. That's what he was really pumping up, was that part, which is I do think it shows that they do have a much better relationship than Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon had, and a much better relationship, again, you could say Mike Vrabel and John Robinson had towards the end. And sometimes that matters because, I mean, you don't have anybody trying to trade your star wide receiver right underneath you on draft night.
Right. I mean, the Lions also then went out in 2022 after finishing that year 3-13-1 with the second overall pick, took Aiden Hutchinson and Jameson Williams in the first round. Jameson Williams, I mean, he wasn't great his first couple seasons, but he's coming on as a legitimate weapon in the offense. So they go out and they hit on some high draft picks, especially Aiden Hutchinson. The Bengals
they've hit on 80% of their draft picks, if I remember correctly, are still on the team.
They are hitting on draft picks like crazy. So Jack Campbell,
Brad Holmes is phenomenal,
and Jahmyr Gibbs, and like all these guys, they keep doing that. Brad Holmes has been great. And then on the Bengals side, as we're looking at comparisons to what this Titans team could be, they go out and get Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in subsequent drafts that really obviously changed the dynamic of that roster. So as we're looking at how the Titans can, like, how close are the Titans? Are the Titans a draft class away from being hyper competitive? Are they a new coaching hire like the Lions brought in Ben Johnson from being hyper competitive? Or do they have the pieces now? They've been dealing with a lot of injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Do they just need to get healthy and have another year in the system? And that'll do, like, what does this Titans team need to become the Lions and the Bengals who turned things around? And ignore the 2024 Bengals because we're not talking about them.
So it's kind of weird. So it's gonna feel like I'm probably talking two different, both sides of my mouth. Like I have confidence that this staff, in particular, I have confidence in this head coach GM duo, but I'm not entirely convinced, depending on your definition of hyper competitive. Like when I hear hyper competitive, I hear win the division, the playoff contenders,
Yeah.
not wild card playoff contenders, real playoff contenders. That's likely not going to happen next year. Maybe it does, but because this division is kind of crappy. I mean, and the Texans are kind of regressing, and Bobby Slowick is his wonderkin, you know, labels kind of like rubbed off on him.
Yeah.
So maybe it could happen, but like I guess it's like a fool me once, shame on you. You fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me three times, not going to get fooled again. And
I
I've
thought it
been
was can't
fooled
fool
under
me
Mike
again. Yeah.
Vrabel's the last 2 years. I got fooled under this, got fooled a little bit under this year, and I was a little lower than most people. So I'm kind of in wait and see mode. But what I see from Brian Callahan, and I read this book recently by Michael Silver, The Why is Everything, which details everything from Kyle Shanahan as a ball boy all the way up to all the various branches of his coaching tree. I mean, like details that you could not believe that is in a book. And I feel like Brian Callahan is of that mold where he knows what's wrong. He's smart enough to fix it. He's going to have a plan. And I think what we have here is just too much newness at once. You got so many new players, both on defense and offense, that have no experience in the systems that they're deploying. You have a defensive coordinator that's never called plays. You have a head coach that's also never been a head coach, but is also an offensive coordinator that is calling plays, and he's never called plays before. And then you have a special teams coordinator who's never been on special teams. Then you have a quarterback that is learning a new system. Like I think we just really underrated how much newness was going to happen. And this is Rand Carthon's, from what I've heard about the last year, it was basically just kowtowing to whatever Vrabel wanted. And I think there is a little bit of kowtowing to what this staff wanted in certain situations, that he's got to quit doing that. He's got to either trust his board, trust his process, and tell these coaches, even if they have more experience than them in the league, that, hey, no, NPF sucks. He's not a dog. I don't care what you saw on film. You're not going to get what you think Bill Callahan out of NPF. And he's got to lay, some oh gosh, the word's escaping me. Not limits, but he's got to lay. You got to draw a line somewhere, and that may be an issue of Ren Carthon's. But I don't think there is an issue of recognizing talent when it comes and scouting, and I don't think there is an issue with negotiating, finding players, finding different avenues. I don't think that is an issue. So like I look at it and I go, okay, could a player acquisition cycle put them in talks to maybe win the division? Maybe. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be more of the Lions path, where it's a losing year this year, possibly a better version of the losing year next year, and then you hit on something, because we still don't know really what Will Levis is. And that really is the biggest thing for any team, is what is your actual quarterback and what is he going to bring to the team? And the only way to do that is to build a team around him. So that's why they had to spend money. And sure, they spent some money on defense too, but they have to field players. They can't. I know that like you guys would, I think Graver, you said that you'd be content with, just, kind of coasting through the year, and then they went and made all these plays. We would not be content with that. We'd be saying, why did they waste all that money? Why did they not spend any money? Why did they not go get good players? That's what we'd be saying. And at least there was an attempt to make changes. And they, like I said, they tore this roster down to the studs. They had a huge roster turnover, just like the Lions did their first year. And all these new parts, we're seeing the new parts start coming together. We're seeing some of the things start working. So I feel like you alluded to earlier, Graver, you get another year of everybody, and then you add just a few new pieces, and then you add youth, and then you're just getting there. Like you're building, you see what they're building. You just gotta be patient. You gotta be patient. I know that's hard in the NFL.
The question that I want to ask as a follow-up, Zach, is like, I want to flat out ask you if you think they are a well-coached team because
Yes.
it feels like they don't just lose regularly, right? Like it's got to be a ton of, and forget, you know what, not forget the special teams errors, but that's not even what I'm alluding to. It's more like it's either a complete meltdown in the first half, more commonly in the second half, at least to start the year. But like they don't lose normal games. It's special teams gaffes. It's first half meltdown, second half meltdown. All the weird quotes we got out of the Washington game. It was too cold. We're suffering from success. I mean, 3-8, suffering from success. The DJ Khaled album cover. Like you're 3-8 after that Houston win. We're suffering from success. Like I think Mike has said it a lot. You talk to Mike all the time. Like I agree that to me, they feel like a team that's being head coached by an offensive coordinator. And look, it's his first year, and I'm certainly have not once have I advocated for firing Brian Callahan at the end of this year. I think that's too quick on the trigger. I think he definitely deserves a second year. But I won't lie, I am worried that this time next year we might be having that conversation. But flat out, do you think they are a well-coached football team right now?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say question, because well, I mean, the reason it's hard to answer because it's like it's hard to say that a 3-9 team is a well-coached team, right? I mean, let's just all call it what it is. But do I feel that it leans more heavy on the personnel side? Yes, because at the end of the day, like penalties are penalties. Penalties have no bearing on whether you're a great coach team or a poorly coached team. Okay, you say that. Okay, so is John Harbaugh and Andy Reid, are they shitty coaches?
No.
Okay, they've been in the top. They've been top 5 in penalties for the total year. Penalties 3 out of 4 or 3 out of the last 5 years. And Baltimore currently has 124 penalties, which is more than what the Tennessee Titans currently have. So there are some instances where maybe coaching is the issue, but your boy Mike Vrabel led the NFL in penalties a couple of years ago, and he was just outside the top 5 last year. And, just saying that, like, we can't, I don't think you can directly say that it's 100% coaching. And even Coach Mack said, some of this stuff is just players not paying attention. Like J.C. Latham not paying attention and NPF not paying attention when the ball's being snapped. That's on them. That's not on the coaches. Like that kind of stuff right there is not on them.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think people realize how much NFL teams bang their head into the wall every day trying to babysit these guys, right? Yeah. Like it really is a lot of babysitting of grown men happens in the National Football League, and it's not always easy.
And listen, and that's not to excuse all the penalties, but penalties are up across all the teams. The special teams is pretty bad for all the teams. Listen, none of them are as bad as what the Tennessee Titans have had. But if you go back and watch the All-22, you're looking at Jack Gibbons getting carried by another grown-ass man for a pump block. How's that Colt Anderson's fault? Linebackers are supposed to be able to play the special teams position and that particular special teams position. And you know what happened? That was week 1. They coached it. They decided that, okay, that's a mistake. That's not really a scheme thing. That's not really an issue. That's you winning a one-on-one matchup. You're a player versus player. Okay? They gave him a couple of weeks. Week 4, Calais Campbell almost blocks a punt. Don't know if you guys remember that in the Miami game. Because Jack Gibbons made a mental error and decided not to really even get in his way, even though that is his man. When you're looking at the All-22, that is supposed to be his assignment. They benched his ass after that. Yes. This staff is holding people accountable. Nobody wants to think that they are, but this staff is holding people accountable. So I think they're a well-coached team? I do think they are a well-coached team, but they are a well-coached team in where I see the vision. Like, that is what I'm saying. Like, you look at Will Levis's progression since coming back. Look at what they're doing with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Darrell Baker Jr. I mean, stuff like that. That is a sign of a good coach. Does that mean that they're a great coach? Does that mean that they're going to work out everything next year? No, but that does mean, to your point, Melo, you got to give them another try.
I think you brought up Colt Anderson in one of the conversations I really wanted to have on this show, and I'm going to loop it into I'll Drink to That, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages in East Nashville, because what I'm drinking to is just sitting back and watching this debate unfold. Is Colt Anderson deserving of another season? Justin, you start. Zach, you respond.
you kidding me? Like, there's no way they could bring Colt Anderson back. And look, I slammed that hiring process when it happened, and I can't stop patting myself on the back for it because that hiring process left a lot to be desired if you paid close attention to it at the time, which not enough people did, in my opinion. No, of course not. Like even if Zach, I'm sure even if Zach is right, and God, it just kills me in the stomach to say that, but even if he's right, and a lot of this falls on the players. I mean, optics wise, I think Paul Kowarski had a great point the other day where he said, I think Brian Callahan made a comment of, similar to offense, defense, get things right. No, that's disrespectful to the offense and defense, right? Like the special teams has been so historically bad. And I think keeping him around sends the wrong message about accountability. No, there's no way he could be back next year.
What did you not like about the process?
I just flat out think they didn't have a great Rolodex when it came to special teams coordinator candidates. I think they had a good Rolodex with OCs and DCs, with, of course, Nick Holtz, Denard Wilson, yada, yada. I don't think they had that when it came to special teams coordinator. I remember when they were hiring it, I remember going back, and you know what we do, right? We look, or what I do and smart people do, they look at potential candidates. I know you've done this. Like, who did Rand Carthon work?
I thought they would hire Colt Anderson.
Yeah, the point is, I remember looking back at, like, who are potential candidates? And I remember coming up short, like, oh, shit, there's not really many. Like, the guys they've worked with in recent years are retired or not available. Like, I just didn't feel like they had a very good Rolodex of potential special teams coordinators. And I thought the process spoke to that lack of confidence, and it's been disastrous thus far.
Okay, so they interviewed, I know for a fact they interviewed 6 people in person and did a 7th phone interview. So I think that was a very thorough process.
They had the guy that got the Bucs job, right?
But that's just wrong. They interviewed 6 different people in person, then did.
I didn't say they didn't interview a ton of people. I didn't say that. I said I just don't.
Well, that's what you're kind of alluding to. You're kind of alluding that the process wasn't thorough, but is 6 interviews in person? It's a pretty fucking thorough one, especially with the 7th interview on the other way. I mean, it's
almost concerns me more. They interviewed 6 people, and Colt Anderson was the best one they interviewed.
I think what they saw was the potential for Colt Anderson to be, who has learned, by the way, under one of the best consistent special teams coaches in the NFL in Cincinnati. And that's why I thought they would go with Colt Anderson, because it was someone that can bring what they're doing in Cincinnati over to this team. Now, has that worked out? No. Special teams is down all across the board. The Tennessee Titans are fielding a historically bad special teams team. But this idea to me is that you look at the plays, watch the all 22, all these little bungles and moves. First off, a lot of them are just fluky, but secondly, they're just poorly executed. And here's the thing, and this is what I've gathered from talking to Blaine for a long time. I've heard it from Mark Mariani. I've heard it from other ex-players that are covering the Tennessee Titans, like Kevin Dyson and Derek Mason. I've heard it from Coach Mack. They all agree. This is a player issue. When you look at the plays, like Jaquan Jackson fumbled this past week, there is no way that is Jaquan Jackson not having a grip on the ball. I mean, there is just no way that Tyler Owens, there's no way that Tyler Owens should have been able to reach over with his 39-inch arms, reach over, I think, as Otis Reese, be able to pop it out with the ball on the other end of the arm. This is a personnel-driven issue. Does that mean I don't think that Colt Anderson will get fired? No. I think there is a good chance that he could get fired because it's just more of an optics sacrificial lamb thing. But I'm not necessarily sold that he should get fired. They have fixed the punt blocking unit, right? The punt blocking. They went out and made proactive moves to try to fix the coverage unit. And guess what? The coverage unit was fine last week. The problem is that every time they fix something, something else breaks. If they put in Mason Kinsey and Julius Chestnut and Tyjae Spears as the kick returners and punt returners, there's nothing else that happens, should he still get fired? Because that seems like that was good coaching. That pretty much points that it's personnel, because their method and the way they have worked and worked the waiver wires, and they worked out like 5 or 6 special teamers last week. They're talking about replacing Jaquan Jackson this week. Just saying, right there, they're telling you inside the building when they watch the film and they assess what this team does, like they do every Monday morning, this is a player issue.
I mean, I think there's too much excuse making going on. I think you're right in the sense of, like, they fix something, something else breaks. That's because they don't know how to fix something without overcorrecting it. And that's why something else goes wrong elsewhere. I just feel like they're overcorrecting. We're leaving more guys in coverage so we don't get the punt blocked. And then we've got not enough people chasing down the field and we're allowing 50-yard returns because we gotta protect Ryan Stonehouse first. To me, it comes off too much as like Colt Anderson's the unluckiest special teams coordinator of all time. I tend to lean that's not the case. I tend to lean, there's probably something wrong with him too.
And there may be some issues of communication and teaching and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the players are responsible for some common sense plays, and they lack common sense. And that does not fall under Colt Anderson's purview. That falls under Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan's roster construction.
Yeah, I think roster construction plays a big role for sure. And I've said that on this show, Graver.
I think the biggest problem has always been roster construction, but I also don't know how competent Colt Anderson is. And it's sort of like trying to judge a team that doesn't have a quarterback and judging them. It's like, can you judge Colt Anderson without competent special teams players? And I just want to see what Colt Anderson looks like as a coordinator with good players before we really form an evaluation. But I don't know if we're going to have a chance to do that without him just getting fired, like you said, Zach, because of optics.
So what have you seen, Melo, from the scheme that lets you know that his scheme sucks? Like, since you're such a special teams aficionado.
No, I get it. I get that. I get it. I totally get that. But to me, it's just like when you're talking
I think
about
it's sacrificial lamb. It's head on a spike. It's. Here's the thing. This is a guy that's doing this for the first time. Denard Wilson had his defense look like shit last Sunday. Nobody's calling for his job. In fact, people are still calling for Denard Wilson to be head coach.
How is that close, Zach?
And listen, my
Denard
point
Wilson's
is this:
was ranked number one in multiple categories throughout the year.
We all know that was bullshit because they played Caleb Williams.
Okay, but there's a big difference between that and being the worst
I do agree
special
there's
teams
a big
we've
difference,
ever
but
seen.
my point is what about the games where he didn't have a special teams mishap? Right?
Two of them, 3 of them out of 11.
There are 3 or 4.
Less than half of the games. That's crazy thing to say.
What if he doesn't have it anymore? Does that mean he should still get fired?
I lean towards yes because the damage is done. I think.
No, then you are letting emotions run wild and not logic. Because let me tell you this: they will not fire him if there's nothing else that happens.
I think what you're not factoring in, and look, you might be right, and it might be a mistake. I think what you're not factoring in is the accountability factor. I think there's too much that matters so much in that locker room. I think you send the wrong message to your football team if you let him return.
They are holding the right people accountable. They benched Jack Gibbons. They benched Julius Chestnut, who hasn't seen punt coverage except for when Luke Gifford had to go in for Kenneth Murray this past week since he allowed a punt block. I mean, they are holding people accountable. They are putting in new players all the time. So
Luke Gifford was a pretty damn good special teams player, it felt like, before this season. I feel like he's having the worst year he's ever had. Like, that's what he's known for. That's why they brought him here. I felt like he was pretty good on, like, I don't remember ever complaining about Luke Gifford on special teams, 2 years ago.
Well, he just joined last year, and then I think he got injured. I think didn't he get injured?
But he was
last year?
When they signed him, he was like special teams ace. Luke Gifford is the type of guy.
And he has been good. I mean, he hasn't been bad. I mean, that's the thing, is that you guys think that because one person is bad in one moment that the whole special teams unit is bad. But that's what special teams is, right? Special team, all it takes is one person screwing up. All it takes is Cedric Gray in his first ever NFL snap not wrapping up, because we know that colleges don't teach you how to tackle. And like there's a tackling epidemic. We know that James Williams has really turned into a good special teamers, right? Cedric Gray bounced back after that and it's turned into a couple of good special teamers. Like, there are people getting better. Like Ryan Stonehouse, he's a great punter, but he is learning how to be a punter right now. You can see, because he's trying to be more directional. And guess who's been trying to do that forever? This team for 3 years has been trying to get Ryan Stonehouse to be a directional kicker, and you can actively see that they are actively trying to get it done and not outkick the coverage, and they're trying to do that. Listen, this is one of those things where it's like, I get that it's really hard to argue that someone should keep their job after a historically bad year. But a lot of this is not scheme related. A lot of this is just player personnel related. And we can't sit here. Melo, you cannot bitch and moan in the chat once they cut Matt Jackson and Anthony Kendall and Hassan Haskins and bitch and moan about how bad this special teams roster was and not kind of connect 1 + 1 = 2, that maybe they just have bad special teamers.
I've said that. I remember Graver. I mean, how many times have I talked about Hassan Haskins and Matt Jackson?
No, you're missing his point. He's saying you can't have that cake and eat the Colt Anderson is bad cake also. Did that?
No, I get it.
Because listen, as the players have gotten better, special teams has gotten better. I mean, in certain units. Now they got to fix this return problem, which all it's going to take is Tajay Spears and Julius Chestnut on kick returns, and likely Mason Kinsey as punt return, unless they bring in somebody off the street, which they may. They're bringing in people for workouts all the time.
Maybe I'm too harsh here, but like last week when they benched Jaquan Jackson as a kick returner, but didn't bench him as a punt returner, two things kind of bothered me about it. So, like, I accept Callahan's response after the game to a degree where he said, roster numbers, we just didn't really feel like we had a guy on the, game day roster that could have returned punts. That's why we put him back out there. Two things that bothered me about that answer. I get that because I know how tough it is. That you've only got so many numbers on game day. We need guys to do this. We can't have two guys to do this. But two things that did bother me about that. Number one, it's not like Jaquan Jackson's fumbling issues popped up on Sunday for the first time, right? So part of me wonders if you should have already had a backup plan. And B, I think the one that really bothered me is he actually said, Callahan did, well, we could have put Tyler Boyd back there, very comfortable with him fielding punts, but not comfortable with him as a returner. Can you not send him out? Like the guy, Quan Jackson, 5 fumbles in the last 6 games, I think, something along those lines. Maybe better off putting Boyd back there and just fair catching it as opposed to like, you're getting benched as a kick returner, but we're going to roll you back out there as a punt return.
Well, I think it comes down to that. If the game was close, I think you would have saw the switch. But even though Jaquan Jackson is a guy that fumbles, they're looking for a guy to create something if they get a stop. And that guy is Jaquan Jackson. I mean, on that roster, with the way they handled the punt return issue, like, this all goes back to the roster construction for me. But listen, they're looking for a spark. What if he gets a big play? Listen, we haven't seen him get a big play because that dude can't run vertically for whatever reason. He just decides, I'm going to run horizontally. He was like one of the fastest Titans a couple of weeks ago. And I'm pretty sure it's just on a play where he ran 20 yards out of bounds, like to the sideline. Like, I've never been a fan of Jaquan Jackson. That goes back to him even being drafted was silly. It was Malik Washington was right there. It was silly. He provided you nothing at Senior Bowl, and maybe that's one big thing you can make. Maybe Rank Carthon should go on the Senior Bowl and seen what we seen was Jaquan Jackson just did absolutely nothing all week. He was just a guy wearing pads for the most part. But at the end of the day, they said it was punitive. They're holding people accountable. They're just not holding the people accountable that the fans feel like they should hold accountable, but they're really holding everybody accountable. And I think at the end of the day, what goes on in the meeting rooms, when you talk about how will the players react, the players in the meeting rooms, they know who's at fault because they're the ones getting yelled at. They're the ones getting coached up. They're the ones getting taught. This idea that they have to fire him to, for accountability purposes, the players know. And that's coming from an ex-player. The players know.
That's
Zach,
all. That's
not me. I'm not the ex-player, by the way. Blaine Bishop is.
Pro Bowl leading vote getter Jaquan Jackson to you guys.
We're not doing that.
Disrespecting him. I'll drink to that. Brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville, serving the community since 1985. Their knowledgeable staff is proud to help you with large parties, themed events, or finding something unique for a special occasion. From birthday parties to milestone celebrations to everyday moments, Sinkers can help with the right drink for every occasion. If you head to the sinkersbeverages.com website or check the link in this podcast description, you can join the In-Crowd. In-Crowd members get access to allocated wines and spirits, exclusive events, early access to barrel releases, and more. Plus, Sinkers Beverages is on Uber Eats. That might have been our longest I'll drink to that segment where I didn't just forget to do the closing read that we've ever had. A fantastic debate. I'm not going to assign a winner because I think the people watching this show should let us know who won in the comments below. Who do you agree with?
Oh, they'll say Melo because everybody hates Colt Anderson.
Yeah, but you laid out the facts pretty blatantly there, Zach. I don't know. You made a compelling argument.
What I want the people to comment below is on a scale of 1 to 10. I want them to guess how heartbroken Zach's going to be when Colt Anderson gets fired in the offseason. On a scale of 1 to 10.
I've already said that I wouldn't be surprised if he got fired, but it's going to be not for cause. It's going to be for optics. It's a PR move.
I do agree with that. All right, we got to wrap this thing up. Titans play the Jaguars this weekend. Titans are still playing football? Like, why? Can we just forfeit? No. Let's see if Will Levis can continue his hot streaks. Played 4 good games in a row. Let's keep that momentum going. The Jags have probably the worst defense of any team the Titans have played this season. Trevor Lawrence placed on IR earlier today. Mac Jones will start at quarterback. It's hard to say this about a 3-8, 3-9. What are they? 3-9 football team that has sucked for most of the year. But there's really no excuse not to win this game. Like, you got to go win this game unless you are intentionally tanking for a better draft pick, which they're not doing because they're still coaching and playing for their jobs. There's no excuse not to go win this game. So last week, I predicted a Titans win. That was pretty fucking stupid. Justin, you predicted a Commanders win, although you had it 30-27. It wasn't quite that close. So you're now beating me in our prediction game 7-5. Zach, we're going to get you in on this too. Easton, by the way, had a Titans win last week. That was dumb. Zach, what do you got this week? If you had to give a score prediction for Titans-Jags, where are you going?
I would say this. The players probably got an earful on Monday in film review from Denard Wilson. I mean, I will say this. Mac Jones coming in, Denard Wilson he's gonna eat them alive. And I think it's gonna be 28-7 Tennessee Titans. I think Calvin Ridley, he's aware of the Jerry Jeudy revenge game stat with the highest receiving yards against a former team.
He's not going for 240. Come on.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not saying he's going for 240, but he is aware of that stat, and he is aiming to at least break that stat. Now, whether he does that or not, all that means is that if he even goes for 180, that's still a good game, right? I mean, Titans are going to win. I just feel like this defense is not very good over in Jacksonville, and I go 28-7 Tennessee Titans. And I would have picked Washington to win last week, by the way. So
well, easy to sit here and say that now. Yeah, Doug Peterson, dead man walking as far as his job goes. So I just feel like Jacksonville is sort of quit on the season almost, especially after what happened last week with Trevor Lawrence. It's like, how many other players are on that team thinking, I don't want that to be me in a lost, worthless season. I got a whole career to think about. So I'm also going to pick the Titans. Can they break 30? That'd be fun, right? Let's go 31-17. Titans win.
Wow. I hate you so much.
Price is right me, bro. Price is right me.
Yeah, I was going to go, you know what? I'm going to go 30-17. I'm going to go, that's still Price is Right going $1 lower. I don't know, but I'm going 30 because that's what I was going to go, 30-17. I wasn't going to go 31. I was going to go 30. I'm going to stick to it. I think they finally break 30 at home for the first time in God knows how long. 30-17. I think Will Levis has one of the best games of his career. This defense is so terrible. They've clearly quit on the season. I think Calvin Ridley does. I'm going to put together a Calvin Ridley parlay. Like 6+ catches, 100+ yards, anytime touchdown scorer. Will Levis to throw 2+ TDs. Like I do think the Titans win this game pretty handily. And we had a pretty good article at Titan Sized. I do give my pal Lomas credit when he deserves it. Look, he looked at all the history. I give him a hard time, I still give him a hard time. But he looked at the history of where you end up picking in the draft these last couple of years based on how many wins you have, and he worked out the averages. And Titans could easily, and look, this could be an outlier year. Titans could easily win like 2 more games, and historically speaking, should end up in the same spot they're in now. Like they should pick between 5 and 7, even if they win 2 more games. So don't get too caught up in the whole draft stuff yet. On average, actually,
it's not a good teams draft with. Anyway,
so that's I'm sorry.
It's not a good draft anyway. So why even worry about it?
It's not, but teams with 4 wins, for example, historically speaking, and I think we only use the sample size since they moved to a 17-game season, which I think makes the most sense. So small sample size, but I think you got to account for that extra game. Teams with 4 wins have been most likely to pick 3rd or 4th in these last couple of drafts, and teams with 5 wins were most likely to pick 5th or 6th mean, Titans only have 3 wins, and they're at, what, 7th right now? That's pretty unlucky. So I think no matter what happens, like, Titans are not winning more than 2 games, I think, the rest of the year. Like, I would predict they win 2 more games the rest of this year.
They got Jacksonville twice.
I know, but I'm still going with probably 2. They're bad enough where I think they probably go 2 and 3 is not, that. They only got 5 games left, right? They go 2 and 3, and they still end up picking like 5th, 6th, or 7th. So I'm going with the win, and I'm not worried about the draft order.
All right, we swept it. We all expect big things from this offense. We all expect basically a blowout, if not a comfortable win, a blowout for this team. We expect Calvin Ridley to go off. So Jacksonville will probably win 28-10. Calvin Ridley will have 1 catch for 10 yards. Will Levis will throw 3 interceptions. That's just the way it's got to be because of where our expectations are. That's how football
Titans
works.
will make 3 special teams mistakes. And if that happens, we're bringing Zach back on here to break down the all 22.
Exactly. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We appreciate it if you're listening. We appreciate you even more if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you follow Zach on Twitter at the Zach Lyons. Thanks, Zach, for joining us today. Thanks to Sinkers Beverages. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Drop a comment below. Who won the great debate of 2024? Maybe that's the episode title. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Check. So let us know in the comments who won. And we'll be back on Sunday to recap this Titans-Jags game. So until then, y'all stay safe out there. And should I hit it? I'll hit it.
Titan down.
A Broadway sports media production.